I want to say a huge warm welcome for you. Hang around. We'd love to get to know you. If you feel comfortable, fill out one of those cards. Give it back to me or give it back to Adam. For the simple reason, we just love to be able to love on you in however that looks. And part of doing that is we need to be able to contact you in some way. So if you feel comfortable, love to get some details so we can support you in any way. So Adam's obviously shared some of the sad news that's happened this week with the passing of Kira. But there also is some exciting news. Do you guys want to come up the front? Yes, you do. Does everyone know what's happening when I invite people up the front? It's generally someone's got engaged, someone's getting married, someone's having something happening. So they're already married, just so you know. But they are getting married again, yeah? Like it's after 12 months recommitment. Yeah. These guys are pregnant. Yeah. So we're expecting another Stevenson. Not Stevens, Stevenson. And so, hey, how about you guys stretch your arms out? I want to pray over these guys. I want to pray over Harley as well. So, Father, I thank you for this family, Jesus. I thank you for Chris. I thank you for Hannah. I thank you for Harley, Jesus. I thank you for the gift that they are, for the gift that they are for us, for the gift that they are to the people that they connect with and that they are surrounding, Jesus. And God, through this time, we want to stand with them and we want to grieve with them as well as they're grieving a loss, Jesus. But we also want to stand with them and celebrate this morning as they get to announce to us, Jesus, the birthing of a new life in their family, Jesus. So I pray a blessing over this pregnancy, Jesus. We pray that everything is healthy, everything moves forward without any hindrances, without any obstacles. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Make sure you encourage them. Make sure you hang around, grab a tea or coffee, ask them lots of questions. So relatively, I'm going to take a couple of minutes because I think it's a good story. They came and told me a little whiles ago that they were pregnant, and I was sworn to secrecy. And then we're at music practice. This is a couple of weeks ago. This is before they've announced it to anyone. And like Chris and I are talking as everyone's sort of packing up, and I was trying to like say to Chris, I think it's time for you to go. You get out of here, and I'll get out of here, and everyone will get out of here. And I turned to Chris and I said, all right, you go home and be with your growing family. And I haven't thought anything of it. And Alex is standing at the sound desk, and she's turned around, she's like, ah! She said, did you just say something you weren't supposed to say? I said, no, I didn't. And she says, well, what do you mean growing family? I said, well, I don't know, they've got chickens, they've got dogs, they've got ducks, they've got cats, they've got to go home to their growing family. And as I'm saying it, I'm thinking through, if you don't know the Johnsons, Will Johnson, he loves chickens, he loves all that sort of thing. And as I'm thinking through, I'm like, this is the wrong family member. This should be William, I don't know what to say. And I had to ring up Alex, and I tried to swear her to secrecy, and it was, gosh. It was all good, though. It was all good. So they are pregnant, and that is exciting news. So I'm normally good. So if you need to tell me stuff, it's normally okay. It normally is okay. Just sometimes it all goes wrong. Yeah. So for that, if you missed last week, if you weren't around last week. Last week we started a sermon series called Happy Ever After, which isn't about pregnancy. It's not about Shrek. It's not about fairy tales. It's not about marriage, though. You could relate it to a pregnancy. You could relate it to your marriage, a whole host of things. So the series is Happy Ever After, a joyful life is a selfless life. With the premise being, or the idea being, that we all want to come to this place where we end happy ever after. Not end life happy ever after, like, oh, they lived happy ever after, but rather we want to get to the end of whatever season it is in life and finish happy ever after, specifically when everything in life is falling apart, when everything in life is difficult, where it's just a struggle to move forward. We want to end it. We want to move through it with happiness. We want to move through it with joy. We want to move through it with peace. And so we launched that last week, and so this will take us for the next whatever weeks this is the second week, so there's another 2 weeks after this. And the premise being of what we looked at and what we're tracking through is Jesus' most harrowing times, which looks like walking through with Jesus through the lead up to the cross, the crucifixion, then post the cross, and how he traversed that and what he's got to say to us specifically surrounding that. And so the big thing that we looked at last week was that the reason we so often, I think, struggle with finding happiness or joy or contentment or peace is because we are so preoccupied with us finding those emotions, those feelings, or whatever it is, with us being served. We only feel happy, we only feel joyful when we're being served. We only feel good about ourselves when we're being served. If they do this for me, I feel good, I'm happy, I'm enjoying life, everything's going good as long as this happens, as long as they speak this way, if they give me these gifts, if I do this to serve myself, then I feel happy, I feel joy, I feel peace. And so the big statement that we looked at last week from Luke 22, and I'm just going to paraphrase it, just after he's had his last supper with his disciples, he turns to his disciples, and they've started arguing and bickering about who's going to be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And he gives them this story. He says, or asks them this question: who would you rather be? The person that goes to the banquet and sits at the table and is served the meal, or would you rather be the person that serves the meal? He asks them that question, then he finishes up with this statement. He says, you would rather be the person that serves the meal. As far as you would rather be the person that serves. Sorry, the other way around. You would rather be the person that is served. You don't feel content. You don't feel happy. You don't feel important unless someone is serving you. And then he goes on, he says, but I've shown you a better way. And so the big idea that we were looking at was that Jesus, the Son of God, the Christ, the Son of the living God, came to earth as God to be worshipped, God to be adored, God to be bowed down to, God that we should be serving. And he came down and he chose to serve us. And he turns to them and he says, but I have shown you the example that you should follow, that you should serve. And so that was a big thing that we looked at last week. And so this week we're following on with a similar theme that we're going to start there and head in a different direction. So I'm going to pray and then we'll get into it. So Father, I thank you for what it is that you've been sharing with me surrounding this garden. I pray that as I share it, Father, I pray that you give food to our spirits, food to our souls, Jesus. I pray that what I have to say, Jesus, I pray that it takes us from one place and it helps launch us further forward to where it is that you're calling us to go and calling us to step into. In Jesus' name, amen. Who likes having fun? Yeah. Who's discovered that fun's not easy had sometimes? I'm going to explain that statement in a minute. So, for instance, I've come to this place in life where I've discovered that there's different levels and different types of fun. There's memorable fun, and then there's roller coaster fun. So the memorable fun is stuff that it takes a while to realize that it actually was fun, and the roller coaster fun is the opposite. It's instant fun, it's instant gratification, it's instant everything, but you generally don't remember it. And so to give you an example, several years ago, a really good friend of mine, we decided that we wanted to go hunting. It's like, I love getting out in the mountains and I love shooting deer. If you're a conservative or a conservationist, I'm really, really sorry if you're watching online or you're here. I love you. You may not love me at the second, but that's okay. We'll move through that. Anyways, and so we decided we'd go out hunting and all of that. And so what our idea was, we'd take horses in there because every year, Queen's birthday weekend, the gates to the mountains, the gates to the high country are closed for a large portion of the season and through the coldest part of the year, obviously. So we thought the best way to get in there, like this is like hunter's paradise. There's no one in there. The deer are going to be quiet. They're going to come up and sniff out of your hand, basically, which never happens, but that's the thought. And so we decided what we'd do is we'd take some horses and we'd pack in there. And so the idea of a pack trip is it's like an animal camper trailer or caravan. The animal carries all your gear. You ride one, you lead some others, and so you're riding one horse, the other horses are carrying your tents or your bed rolls, your food, your everything. And so we march in this adventure, like planning on spending 4 days hunting and having a grand time. It was going to be phenomenal. So the backstory to this was this. It was raining every day leading up to this. It was wet, 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 wet. And so it was about middle of July. It was freezing, freezing cold. We had trouble with the car, with lights, with all sorts of things on the way up there. So we didn't get up there till much later than anticipated. We get going and everything's good. It's drizzling, but no one really cares. We're excited about it. We're happy about it because we're going on this big adventure that is going to be absolutely fantastic. And then we start realizing it's getting dark and we need to rush to camp. So we managed to get to camp, unload the horses, and then my friend who's actually sitting up the back, Jono, some of you know him, some of you won't. You can tease him about it afterwards if you do. Like we unpack everything, and so I go about tending to the horses. I feed them, I fence them, I water them, I do that, and he starts lighting the fire. Now understand everything I'm about to say. Everything is soaking wet. The sticks are wet, the leaves are wet, and it's not just damp. It has been raining, torrential downpour for the last couple of weeks. It is wet. And so I start doing all this, and he's lighting the fire. I can see lots of smoke, but I can't see much of anything else. There's a lot of that stuff happening. And you know those looks that your friends give you when you come and see them? And the look is, whatever they've just done affects you. You know those looks? That it's not like I just did something stupid. It's something funny. It only affects me. It's I did something stupid. We've both got a problem. It was one of those looks. So I come over to start giving him a hand, and he's looking at me. He's got that look in his face. I'm like how's the fire going? There's just smoke everywhere. There's no flames. And he said, we had a packet of firelighters. We have 2 left. Day 1 of 4 days. We have 2 firelighters left. And I'm like, we can't use any more firelighters. And so thankfully, with 2 of us blowing on the fire, we get the fire going, and the fire moves through, and it's all good. So then the idea the next day, we go to sleep, we're warm, we're having a good time. The idea is the next day that we'll get up, and we won't go hunting in the morning, we'll get up and we'll cut enough wood to survive the rest of the trip. So we don't have to collect any more firewood, any more of anything like that again. And specifically because everything's wet, we needed to find dry stuff, which was next to impossible. So we didn't have a chainsaw. We packed in these little tiny axes. So they weren't big axes, they're little tiny ones. It sounds stupid, but the reason being trying to get weight stripped down to a bare minimum. And so we got these little axes, and we couldn't get any wood from the ground because it was soaking wet. So we had to start trying to find dead trees and fall dead trees. But we couldn't do big ones because they were way too big, and so we'd drop trees, which was great. But then after we dropped the tree, then we had to split it again and again and again to make it small enough to fit on the fire. And then because everything was wet, we'd have to split everything down the middle so we could get to the dry stuff, to get kindling, to get everything to light. And one would think half a day of doing this and you'd have enough firewood to last the thing. Half a day of doing this, we had enough fire to last the afternoon. That was it. And then so the next day, we got up and we did the same thing again. And then the next day, we got up and we did the same thing again. And it was cold, and it was wet, and it was cold, and it was wet. And I think we went hunting deer twice. We didn't see anything. We just walked through rain. We walked, it was just cold. And then we jumped on the horses, went back, and got back. And on the way back, it wasn't like the trip wasn't bad. It wasn't like we didn't enjoy it. Like there was parts, there was elements of it that absolutely we enjoyed. But it wasn't on the way back, specifically once we got home, like, let's do that again. Let's do it tomorrow. Let's go back out tomorrow and let's face the cold. Let's face the rain. Let's cut wood. Let's just fight to survive every day for the next 4 days. Let's do that again. It was not that at all. It was somewhat fun, but kind of only just there. But then I look back now, and then they only had to get 6 months on, and that became the best trip we ever did. We look back and that was fun. Let's do it again. That was incredible. Can you remember when we did this? How fun was it? Having to cut all the wood. That was stupid. That was ridiculous. Who would do that? But that was so much fun. It was so enjoyable. And we look back now after time, and that was an engaging trip. One that is fresh in our memory. One that constantly comes up in our memories. And so the thing that I've noticed between memorable fun and roller coaster fun is you go to the theme park, you jump on the roller coaster, you play with the games, you do all that sort of thing. But tomorrow or the next day, you don't remember it. The only way you remember it is if there's photos or there's a stuffed teddy that you've won and you've nailed to the wall, because that's what you do with teddies or something. And that's the only way you can recollect that time. You don't remember it. It's roller coaster fun. It's instant. It happens straight away. It's fun right away, but it's not memorable. Whereas memorable fun often comes with some grueling tasks. It's some difficulties, some tragedies, some hardship to work through that we've got to endure, but in the end it becomes memorable fun. I think specifically joy and happiness are something similar. And this is a whole lot of what we talked about last week. There is instant gratification, there is instant joy, there is instant happiness. But a lot of that is so much similar to memorable versus roller coaster. It's here today and it's gone tomorrow. It's fleeting. Last week we called them mud pies. All we're doing is making mud pies. They don't sustain. They don't do anything. They don't feed you. They don't fill you. They're here today, gone tomorrow. And so many of us live our lives trying to find joy, trying to find happiness, trying to find peace, but it's always fleeting because we won't endure the season of whatever it is that we're walking through, traveling through at the time in order to arrive there. There's this quote from a book called Pilgrimage of a Soul. You put the first slide up, please, Matt. It has this to say on a similar sort of subject. It's too big a quote for me to remember off the top of my head. And so it talks about this subject, and in this, she talks about fruit. Fruit of, as far as alluding to the fruit of the Spirit, the fruit of Jesus. As far as he gives us fruit, he brings us fruit with the idea that one of the fruits of the Spirit in the presence of Jesus is joy, should be residing in our lives. And so Felina Hertz, I think is how you pronounce her first name, she has this to say. She says fecundity. If you don't know what that word means, it means this. It is producing growth. It's producing birth. It's producing fruit of abundance. She says, I love this word because it means more than being fruitful. It means having the capacity to bear an abundance of fruit. We like the thought of being fruitful, but we rarely examine what it requires of us to bear fruit. We like the thought of being happy, of being joyful, of living in a state of constant peace, but we don't often examine what it requires to arrive at that place. And she says this, bearing, as far as this, what it requires, bearing, discomfort, pain, trial, patience, darkness, and labor are all the things that we need to bear in order to arrive at this place of fruitfulness or of happiness or of joy. She goes on and in the book and says more. Fecundity speaks of the capacity of fruitfulness, the capacity to be happy, the capacity to be joyful, the capacity to be peaceful. Jesus, of course, she says, understood this concept and explained it perfectly in pointing his disciples to grapevines. Comparing the connection to the vine with a connection to himself, he revealed the secret to being fruitful, as far as the secret to bearing fruit, to bearing happiness, to bearing joy, to bearing peace is found in relationship with Jesus. And she goes on. The capacity for fruitfulness is found in relationship to him. That connection, she says, provides the capacity to bear real fruit. And if you appreciate a good glass of wine, you know what it takes to produce such exquisite vino. As far as to produce good wine, there's a process that you have to go through, and it's normally struggle street for the grapes. She continues on with the quote and says this, the endurance of the grape, as far as the endurance of the grape to move through difficult situations, difficult times, is equal to the quality of the wine that it can produce. The endurance of the grape, how much it can endure, will be the determination of how good that grape or wine tastes. Good wine, she says, like good life, requires arid conditions paired with tender care. Good wine, just like a good life, needs to go through arid conditions paired with tender care. The tender care is Jesus. The tender care is God's comfort, God's leading, God's presence. That's the tender care. But so many of us never arrive at this capacity to produce joyfulness, happiness, peace in our lives. So many of us struggle with arriving at this place of happy ever after because we won't endure the dry, arid conditions. Would much rather run to the theme park to experience instantaneous joy, instantaneous happiness, instantaneous peace. It's here today and it's gone tomorrow. That looks like our bank balances. If I can get more money in the bank, I'll feel good. That looks like if I have this relationship with this person, then I'll feel good. This will be good. That looks like if I do this, if I do that, I'll be good. It's all self-serving, self-focused. Jesus has this interaction where we see him beginning this enduring process. And part of that process started last week with him walking through or going through his Last Supper with his disciples. But then he continues on from verse 22 and 39, if you put that up, Matt. And so he's just left the arguments, the bickerings, everything that was going on last week with his disciples. And now he's leaving that place and he's going to this place called Gethsemane, which is the Mount of Olives. And so leaving there, it says he went as often as he did to Mount Olives. The disciples, they followed him. And when they arrived at the place, he said to them, pray that you don't give into temptation. Pray that you don't give into only doing what you want to do, how you feel. Pray that you don't give into that. He's just had this conversation. What do you want to be? Like, what are you going to be? Are you going to be the person that sits at the table and waits to be served? Or are you going to be the person that serves? And he's saying, I want you to pray over that. And he continues on. He pulled away, it says, from them about a stone's throw. So he hasn't moved far from his disciples, just a short distance. And then he gets to this spot and he knelt down. He drops down to the ground and he prays this. He says, Father, remove this cup from me. If you're not used to it, it's relatively bizarre language as far as remove this cup from me. What's he meaning about that? What he's talking about is he is acknowledging he knows what's about to come. And so the cup is figuratively, as far as the cup's in front of me, someone's asking me to drink it and it's filled with poison. I don't want to do it. And so what he's alluding to is I know that I'm about to be arrested. I know that I'm about to be beaten. I know that I'm about to be crucified. I know that I'm about to die. I know that all of this stuff is happening to me. And so he's on his knees before God and he's saying, God, I want you. I need you. I would like for you to get me out of this. If there's a way, get this cup away from me. I don't want to do it. This is how I feel. I feel discomfort. I feel agony. I'm scared. I'm terrified. I don't feel any peace. I don't feel any joy. I'm not happy about this. I don't want to do it. I don't want to go through with it. So many of us have arrived at that place several times in our lives where we get to the point, and regardless of whether you're a Christian or not, so many non-Christians do the same thing. It's as far as hands in the air. God, if you're real, get me out of here. Get me out of this place. But even us as Christians, we do the same thing. God, get me out of this job. I can't do it. I can't stand it. This is frustrating. It's eating me alive. I'm not comfortable. I'm not peaceful. I'm not joyful. Get me out of this school. Get me out of this relationship. Get me out of this family. Get me out of this financial position. We drop down on our knees and we beg to God, get me out. Get me out. I don't want to be here. This is how I feel. And I love that that's what Jesus is doing, and he's sharing with God, and he's not ignoring what his emotions are saying. He's not ignoring what he's feeling or everything. He's saying, God, I want you. I'd love for you to get me out. I don't want to do this. And then he continues on, and he says this. So just after he said, Father, remove this cup from me, he says, but please, not what I want. What do you want? And I love that he moves from one to the other. So this is how I feel. I want to get out of here, but not what I want. What do you want? This is so similar to what we were looking at last week as far as what do you want to do? Do you want to be the person that is doing the serving, or do you want to be the person that is being served? And Jesus here is demonstrating that I want to be the person that does the serving. I want to serve. See, I think our struggle is we're not willing to endure the season that we're running through, the season that we're going through in order to get somewhere. And so we get to this first prayer and say, God, get me out of here, but we never move to this second prayer where Jesus is saying, not what I want, but I want to do whatever you want to do. This is my heart. This is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm going through. I'm not comfortable. I'm not enjoying this. I'm not peaceful. I'm not happy about it. I'm not joyful. I'm not anything about this, but not what I want, not what I feel, not what's going on with me. I want to do what you want to do. I want to do what's good for me and good for others. I want to serve you. I think the reason that Jesus did this, if you put the next slide up, Matt, is for this simple reason. He's sharing his emotions. He's talking about his emotions. This is what I feel, but the reality is that emotions don't project the good of tomorrow, only the hurt of today. Emotions don't project the good of tomorrow, only the hurt or only the feelings or only whatever it is that I'm going through today. So Jesus, he's here in the Garden of Gethsemane. And he's got all these emotions stirring, all these emotions going through them. And he's not denying them that they exist, that they're not there. But what he's saying is, I understand that this is how I feel, this is what I'm going through. But these are emotions, and all they do is highlight how I feel today. They're not going to direct me, point me, highlight what's coming tomorrow. And so he decides, I am going to endure. See, emotions, they're designed to do something. Emotions and feelings, they're designed to do something, to tell you how you feel. Tell you how you feel at the time. But they never tell you how you're going to feel tomorrow. They're not designed to do that. They're designed to tell you how you feel currently. So our emotions, they come in, and specifically in harrowing times and difficult times, when people turn up and life turns up and situations turn up, emotions turn up, and they point to you, they show you, this is what you feel, this is how you feel, but that's it. Good, on the other hand, does the opposite. It doesn't deny, it doesn't push aside what emotions you're feeling, what emotions you're tracking through, what emotions you're traveling through. It doesn't deny that. It doesn't disagree with that. But what good does is it says, hey, you know what? Tomorrow there's good. Tomorrow, if you endure here, if you remain here, if you keep pushing on, if you keep persevering, there's good coming tomorrow. If you keep serving, there's good coming tomorrow. There's more coming tomorrow. Just because you feel this today, there's something else happening tomorrow. And this is what Jesus is doing here. He has this understanding that emotions don't project the good of tomorrow, only the hurt, only the feelings of today. So many of us, I think, struggle to arrive at happy ever after because we are led solely by our emotions rather than the good of tomorrow. I love that this is the example of what Jesus is doing. He's choosing, I'm not going to be led by these emotions. I'm not going to be led by everything that's going on. I'm going to make aware, but I'm going to follow something else, and that's rather what you're wanting me to do tomorrow. The author of Hebrews, he touches on this. In fact, he describes in detail what we've just been reading about here in the garden with Jesus' prayer. And this is what Hebrews 2 has to say. Hebrews 12:2. It says this: because of the joy awaiting him, if you're confused who him is, that is Jesus. Because of the joy awaiting him, Jesus, he endured the cross, disregarding its shame. Because of the joy awaiting him. Not because of the joy that existed currently now, not because of the joy that he was feeling right now, not because of the happiness that he was feeling in that moment, in that present, in that time, not because of all the tranquility, peace that he was experiencing, no, because of everything that he knew was coming tomorrow, he decided, I'm going to endure today because I know that tomorrow is good. Tomorrow there's something in store. Tomorrow there's life. Tomorrow there's salvation. I think so many of us end up running from situations, end up running from things that are difficult, that bring up really challenging emotions. Because we're after instant gratification, like we talked about last week. We're after mud pies. We're after instant fun. We're after roller coaster joy. And we can never arrive at happy ever after because we won't endure something to arrive somewhere. Think of it this way. Someone's pregnant. It's a female that's pregnant, naturally. So there's a process that this goes through. Generally, when a girl gets pregnant, they're excited about it at the start. Generally, they're excited about it. This is good. I'm looking forward to this. But I'm married, so I've watched this take place. It changes. It's excitement at the start, but it changes to not anger, but frustration, discomfort, and everything. And the longer this pregnancy goes on, the worse it gets. It's like, I'm fat, I'm uncomfortable, I just want to eat everything there is in the house, I can't sleep, I'm so hot all the time, I can't stand my body, and it's just over and over, and I can't sleep because this baby keeps kicking me, and it moves to this severe discomfort. And they know what's coming. As far as they know, I'm going to get to have a baby, so this is all good, this is happy, I'm okay, I can endure this. And one would think it would get better from there. But anyone that has given birth to offspring knows it doesn't. It gets worse from there because there's the actual birth that you have to travel through and track through. And it's painful, I imagine. It's not comfortable. It's not enjoyable. It's not any of that. And husbands, don't ever do this. I've never done this, nor would I ever do this, and it would not be smart. But I would imagine if husbands, we were to say to our wives, when they're in the midst of contractions in labor, or if even just a random stranger enters into the hospital room and says, are you enjoying this? Do you feel happy right now? Do you just feel so peaceful and content with everything that's going on? Like, are you really, really excited? Have you arrived at happy ever after? If they could, they would slap you in the face. And if they didn't, if you were with Barb would punch you in the face. It's not comfortable. It's none of that. It's not joy. It's not happy. It's not peace. It's not comfort. It's a moment. It's a time. It's a season of enduring. But if you were to go back into that room, not long after the birth, in fact, for most of it, very, very quickly after birth, and ask the same question. How do you feel now? They said, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. They'll be holding a child in their arms and they say, this is the best thing that has ever happened to me. Emotions don't project the good of tomorrow. They only project what you're feeling right now, right here, right now. A woman in labor, she's not thinking about the good of tomorrow. She's thinking about what's happening at the time. So many of us live our lives and we struggle to find peace. We struggle to live in this place of complete joy, of complete happiness, because we're looking for roller coaster ride after roller coaster ride after roller coaster ride, and we refuse to endure whatever situation it is that we find ourselves in, to push through that in order to find this place of joy that Jesus has in store from us. These dry, arid conditions with tender, loving care. We're all chasing happy ever after, but so many of us don't arrive at it because we refuse to endure. This is what I honestly believe for every single one of us. God has something in store for you. God's wanting to birth something in you. God's got good for you tomorrow. I don't know what that good looks like for you. Perhaps you don't even know what that good looks like for you, and perhaps it's impossible in the circumstance that you're currently going through to know what that looks like. But this is my encouragement, that we'll never step into that good unless we allow ourselves to endure these dry, arid conditions with tender love and care with the presence of Jesus today. We'll never step into the good of tomorrow unless we endure today. And specifically, as we track through this series, Happy Ever After, with leading into next week, our ability to be able to step into the good of tomorrow comes with enduring the emotions of the day, comes with the feelings of what we're currently going through today, comes with enduring whatever circumstance we find ourselves in order to arrive at the good of tomorrow. I wonder what our lives would look like if whatever situation it is that you're facing, or perhaps that you've faced in the past. I wonder what it would look like if we made a deliberate effort to stand and endure rather than run and retreat. I wonder what our relationships would look like if we stood and endured rather than ran and retreated. I wonder what our friendships would look like if we stood and endured rather than ran and retreated. With our relationships with our kids, if we stood and endured rather than ran and retreated. I wonder what would happen with every area in our lives if we stood and endured. Where would it end up if we did that rather than we ran and retreated? I think what would happen is we'd see ourselves more and more and more stepping into a place of joy. And not fleeting joy, but rather lasting joy, one that's focused on other people and not just on oneself. I think we'd step into a place where we're starting to experience happy ever after through the midst of, regardless of what it is that we're going through, we start experiencing happy ever after. We start experiencing joy. We start experiencing peace because we're allowing ourselves to endure with Jesus. Perhaps you're sitting here and you're thinking, that's a really nice thought. That's a really good idea. And I'd love to be able to outwork that in my life, but I'm a little bit lost as to how to do that. That's what we're going to be looking at in detail next week, specifically as we look at the crucifixion of Jesus, and not only how that affects us, but how that relates to us on a practical level. So how about you stand? I want to pray for you.